Well, hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Midweek Refill. I am your host, Bishop A. Reginald Littman, and we're in an engaging series entitled An Invitation Too Good to Refuse. It's all about prayer and accepting God's invitation to come into fellowship and communion with Him through the powerful vehicle of prayer. I'm so excited to share this session with you. And in part 4, we're going to be talking this week about this subject. This is a question that I am asked from time to time, and I want to attempt to answer it very briefly in this session. Does prayer really work? Have you ever been there where you question that concept? Is there really a need to pray? Does God really hear me? Does prayer really work? Well, I want to go ahead and spoil it for you and go on and tell you absolutely prayer does really work. So I want to share a few principles with you. I want to also encourage you before we begin to make sure that you download the free ebook that goes along with this teaching series. It is 82 pages and you can find the link for it down in the description below. Make sure you get it because inside of my ebook are a host of questions that will help you to really take a deep dive in your personal journey in prayer and take your prayer life to the next level. It's not overly above your head or anything like that, but it's simple, it's to the point, and you'll be able to grow through this time of prayer in this series called An Invitation Too Good to Refuse. Hey, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share this, and let others know about what God is speaking to us in this season. Also, leave a comment. I look forward to fellowshipping with you in the comments. Well, let's jump in to part 4. There are many times, ladies and gentlemen, that the discipline of prayer can be misunderstood simply because of delay. There have been times that God has answered my prayer request rapidly, and then there have been other times that God did not answer my prayer request to the degree that I had hoped. And certainly there have been time factors and some answers that I'm still waiting to hear. But I don't want you to be discouraged if that's where you are. Because often when it comes to prayer as a discipline, we can begin to misunderstand whether or not prayer works just simply based upon that thing called delay, when God takes his time, or perhaps when God does not answer in the manner that we truly think he should. But never allow anything to separate you from receiving God's invitation to pray. Because listen, it is simply an invitation that is entirely too good to refuse. So, what I want you to understand is this, that sometimes those delays can actually cause a person to give up the whole practice of prayer in their daily lives. There have been many times that I too have felt tempted to just stop praying because I did not see God move on my behalf. Now, key word there is I did not see God move on my behalf. That doesn't mean that God didn't move. Sometimes God does not show us what he is doing, but he makes us wait for the final outcome. And sometimes his silence is not no, it's wait. Sometimes his silence is not yet. Sometimes his silence is saying, I'm going to do something for you. It may not be exactly what you want me to do, but I have to prepare you for it and it for you. So wait, hope, and trust me to do what I said that I will do. And God is a God who is faithful, and he will do what he said he would do. So what we should understand is this fact, that even when there are delays, even when it seems as if prayer is not working, listen, prayer does work. Type that into the comments right now. If you know that personally in your own life, prayer does work. And I put an exclamation point there because I want to emphasize that even when it seems as if things are not happening the way that we want, God is not responding as quickly as we want, we must always remember prayer does work. Yes, it does. So, when you are first beginning on your journey and developing your prayer life, sometimes you may wonder how long should you pray, you know? You may wonder things like, are you supposed to ask for what you really want? Is that permissible? Is that a part of the set of rules? Sometimes you may actually wonder, what exactly am I supposed to ask for in prayer? And no matter how long you've been a Christian or a prayer or that kind of thing, these are normal questions that all of us might actually ask from time to time. What am I supposed to ask God for? How long should I actually be praying? And what is it that I'm supposed to do in terms of prayer as far as what I really want? So that's not uncommon for you to ask those questions even years down the road. But listen, as you're walking out your invitation to prayer with God, there are going to be a few things that are going to help you along the way. And in this session, I simply want to keep you encouraged to know that even when it seems as if God's phone is off the hook and he's not listening or responding in the way that you think he should, there's several do's and don'ts that I want you to remember as you think on this theme of, does prayer really work? So when these times come in your life, and they will, there are a few things I want you to try not to do. The first thing is, don't feel abandoned by God. When things are not going as quickly or as smoothly as you think they should, when God is not responding to your every request immediately and in the time frame that you think that he should, do not feel abandoned by God. God's promise to you is, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. I'll be with you until the end of the world. So he does not walk off and abandon his children. God is not an absentee father. Quite to the contrary, God is a very active father who takes excellent care of his children. So when God is not responding in the way or in the manner or with the swiftness that you want him to, don't feel abandoned by God. Also, try not to come to some conclusion. And this is something that we all struggle with. Jump into a conclusion about ourselves or even maybe the prayer that we prayed. There have been many times I've asked God for something, and then when God didn't quite do it as quickly or respond in any manner, or I didn't see any signs of change or progress toward what I'd asked for, I have made the assumption, you know what, either I don't deserve it, or the prayer I prayed was selfish, and I prayed with the wrong motive, the wrong intention, and that's why God is not moving, God has not said anything, God has not done anything. But that's not always true. You should not be quick to jump to an assumption or a conclusion concerning why something has not happened in the manner and or time frame that you think that it should. But quite to the contrary, wait on God and be of good courage. And God will show you in time what his ultimate plan is for your life. So you don't always have to see everything rolled out to know that things are rolling. All right? So it is also important, family, to try not to question the character or the integrity of God. Just because something is not happening as swiftly as you think it should, does not mean you should begin to question, is God really there? Is he really the God he says he is? Does he really still move? I've heard people say, well, I read all of this in the Bible about how God healed and God delivered or set free, made ways, changed situations, or even changed people's personalities. But I don't see him doing that in my life. Is God really still actively involved with humanity? And then some have even gone as far to question, does he care? Is God really up there? Is all of this a fallacy that I've been taught to believe? Am I wasting my breath talking to a God who is not there? Listen, one of the worst things that you can do when things are not happening in the way that you pray that they would happen, or as rapidly as you pray that they would happen, is to begin to question the character or integrity of God. God is immutable, and that's just a $3 word that means that he does not change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And even once we're off the earth, he'll still be that same God. So trust his character. When you cannot track down his hand, trust his heart. Believe in God's ultimate desire and design of your life to bring good to your life. But he's a good father. And that's who he is. So try not to question the character or the integrity of God when there are delays in your prayers being answered in the manner that you feel that they should be. Also, don't feel that you cannot depend on God and begin to rely on your own self in life. You see, relying on our own selves, our own thoughts, our own abilities debilitates us, and it disables us from really being able to function and operate in our best selves. Because when we rely on our own thoughts, which are so limited, we leave God out of the picture. So don't think that an unanswered prayer or delay in a prayer request being answered is a reason to stop depending on God and to start depending on yourself. You know, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but in all of your way, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. You see, even when you can't hear from God or God does not respond rapidly, it's not a reason to stop trusting in him or to feel as if you cannot depend on him. You can always depend on God, but you can never depend on yourself. God is good and great and God and our Heavenly Father at all times, and he's there for us to lean on. So trust in the Lord, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, with not just some of your heart, but all of your heart. That's the totality of your being. And do not lean to your own understanding. Catch the word picture there. As long as you're trusting in God, you're standing in a perfectly vertical position. You're upright, upstanding. But the moment you begin to lean to your own understanding, your position shifts, your position changes, and you are no longer in an upright vertical position because you're in a direction that is pointed one way or the other. You lean when you trust in yourself. You stand when you trust in God. And God promises to direct your paths. But watch this. He doesn't say when. He doesn't say he will immediately direct your paths. And that is a great word picture because directing your paths does not always mean giving you specific instructions. It means that God works behind the scene, putting things in divine order that you sometimes can't see and sometimes may never understand. But what you do understand is that if you trust in the Lord with all of your heart, he will direct your every pathway. And what a blessed reminder that is. That even in the midst of not understanding, not seeing clearly, we can still trust in God, even when we're dealing with times of delay in our prayers being answered. And so, my friends, I want to encourage you that God has not abandoned you at all. Even if it looks like it, feels like it, smells like it, tastes like it, walks like it, God will never, ever abandon you. Somebody just type never in the comments. God will never, ever, ever abandon you. And I want you to remember something this week. As you go through your workbook, that free PDF workbook that I've given to you, there's going to be a host of questions and personal reflection time that you can also share with someone you love to help them as they also accept this invitation that's too good to refuse. I want you to remember this week, that prayer is not getting God to do what you want. Prayer is it's not about God being a slot machine or a vending machine where you put in your dollar in nickels, quarters, dimes, or whatever, or a whole dollar. Of course, these days and times you can swipe your debit card at the vending machine and you punch in E3 because you want some potato chips and you expect it to come out. God is not like that. We don't throw in the right set of money and get whatever we want from God. So prayer is not about getting what you want from God, ladies and gentlemen. Prayer reminds you that you are not in control, but God is in control. Is that a reminder you might need this week to help you make it through a situation that you may be stressing over, that you may be feeling some sense of anxiety over? Well, listen, be reminded and rest in the fact that you're not in control. And the blessing is, in that statement, you're not in control. You know what the blessing is? You're not in control. Which means you're not responsible for how things work out. You're not responsible for pulling everything together. You're not responsible for your own self, but because you are his child, God is responsible for everything coming together. And we know, Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good to those who love God, those who are the called according to his purpose. So it's his job to work it out, not yours. And I like to put it like this. If it's God's will, then it's God's bill. You ought to type that in. If it's God's will, it's God's bill. Meaning that he takes on full responsibility for the details of your daily life. And God will take care of you. So whether you've been praying for 5 minutes or 50 years, begin at the level that you are now. We often assume that because people may have gray hair or have been in church for some time that they are an expert at prayer, but it's just not true. Whatever level you're at, begin there. And as you go into understanding the foundations and principles of prayer, you will begin to communicate with God in power and in confidence. And that's exactly what this series is designed to help you to do. By reading the ebook and going through the exercises, completing the chapters, it will help you to grow and understand the foundational principles of prayer and how to communicate with God. And so I want you to be sure to get that download. There should be a link there in the description, right down there in the video description. Also, not only get the free ebook, An Invitation Too Good to Refuse, Accepting God's Invitation to Prayer, but I want you to also check out the Clear Studies podcast. It is practical. It is fun. It's not very preachy, but I used my other gifts that I share with the world from the counseling and therapeutic perspective to help you to be a better person, to help you conquer challenges in your life, like grief and anger and unhealthy emotions. And so I think you'll enjoy it. I'd love for you to check it out. Subscribe to it so that every time a new episode is loaded, you'll get a notification. And as always, there are free colorful PDF handouts that you can share, print, download, with discussion questions most times to help you dive deeper into the teaching that's going on. Podcasts are amazing because you can listen on your way to work. You can listen while you're in bed, while you're on the treadmill, or while you're hanging your clothes on the treadmill and reaching for that bag of chips. But I want you to partake in that. I think you'll like it, and I'd love for you to share that with others as well. And do leave a comment on the podcast as well. Hey, this has been Bishop Littman. It's always my joy sharing with you each and every time here on the Midweek Refill. Again, this is part 4 of An Invitation Too Good to Refuse. And I hope you're being blessed by it as much as I am bringing it to you. I look forward to sharing with you next week.